Hello, and welcome to the virtual Scandinavia House and today's book event celebrating the Finland in the Nordic Council Literary Prize. Joining us today is Kaj Korkea-aho, and it's moderated by Sara Abdollahi. Unfortunately, Christina Carlson and Karin Erlendsson, who is representing the autonomous region of Åland, of the Åland Islands, is unable to join us today. 70 years ago, in 1952, the Nordic countries decided to cooperate closely. In the wake of the Second World War, they formed the Nordic Council. In the US, you often call it Scandinavia, but in strictly speaking, Scandinavia is just Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. The Nordic Council and the Nordic cooperation also includes Iceland and Finland, the Åland Islands in the Baltic Sea, and the Sami people in northern Norway, Sweden, and Finland, as well as the Faroe Islands and Greenland in the North Atlantic. One of the main goals of the cooperation was to make the Nordic countries more integrated and the most sustainable region in the entire world. To celebrate its 10-year anniversary in 1962, the Nordic Council created the Literary Prize. That was 60 years ago today, or 60 years ago this year. Every year since, it has paid tribute to some of the best Nordic literature and rewarded some of the finest work in this vast region. Past Finnish winners include Vainolina, Viaho Meri, Bo Karpelin, Antti Turi, Tua Forsström, Kari Hotkanemi, Sofia Oxenen, Kjell Wester, and Monica Fagerholm. Please excuse my pronunciation. And on November 1st in Helsinki, we'll know this year's winner. And next week, the series continues at Scandinavia House, and we'll be speaking with the Faroese nominee, Benny Bergson, on the 11th of October. This talk is being recorded and will be made available on the website, scandinavias.org, as well as our YouTube page. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them towards the end of the program. Introducing the authors. So Kaj is a Finnish-Swedish author, columnist, and comedian. He previously published novels including Sitelmai som liten å in 2009, Grasen är mörka på andra sidan, 2012, Anna Boken in 2015, and this latter has been translated into 6 languages. Sara is a critic and an essayist, and she has previously been editor-in-chief for the Swedish Writers Association Women magazine. She is an editorial member of SITE and a member of the assessment committee for the Nordic Council Literary Prize. So please welcome Kaj and Sara.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Kaj, nice to be here and talk to you about your wonderful book, Röda rummet.
Nice to see you, Sara. Thank you very much. I like being here.
And as we talked about before the talk started, our English is not the best, but we will do our best to talk about this book and you, right?
We will. I'll do my best. As a disclaimer for everybody listening, I'll mention that I have a stutter, and it usually doesn't bother me, but when I speak in a foreign language, and if I'm a bit nervous, it might show up. So if I'm suddenly doing weird faces and having some moments of silence, it's not some serious illness, it's just my stutter. So but I'll do my best to make myself understood.
Great. So I'm thinking that let's start with a reading from your book, and then we will talk about the book. How does that sound?
It sounds smart. Let's do it.
Yes.
And I have a sample translation of the beginning of the book. It's translated by Bradley Harmon at MIT. And I'll read from the very beginning of the book. And we can talk about it after that. I can recall my sister Rebecca sitting on the floor amongst a mess of sheet music and clothes. "Now I've got it," she said. "Are you listening?" On her shirt sleeve were traces of snot and tears. A few minutes earlier, an altercation had flared up in the kitchen, and I had realized that it was the end of the piece that night, that it wouldn't take long before she slinked over to me where I was lying on the sleeper sofa in Dad's office, which was my temporary home, without knocking or asking if she was intruding. She looked at me with a cunning smile. I know how you'll find somewhere to live. Is that so? I mumbled. Do tell. For 2 weeks, I had been living with Dad and Merve and Rebecca in the house in Hakunila as a result of shitty circumstances that had accumulated like Tetris blocks when the player loses control. Rebecca could very well have heard me swearing about the situation on the phone one night, but I was nevertheless surprised that she brought up the matter. You can trade one for a book, she said. Who would trade a book for an apartment? Someone who really likes books. And who likes books that much? I don't know. Me neither. And I don't remember anything else from the conversation, but that bit about trading an apartment for a book lodged itself in my head. Perhaps it was the allure that something in life could be so simple to figure out, or the reminder that the optimism and playfulness that I myself had completely lost still existed in the world. That winter, I was creeping like an insect towards everything that emanated heat and light. I can read more, but maybe we can have some discussion about the story and
Yes.
the book, and I might continue a bit later, maybe.
Yes, that sounds perfect. So, as Kaj told us, you are nominated with this book for the Nordiska Rådets litteraturpris. And I'm going to read the nominee so that people who haven't read the book or the nominee will get a clue about the book, and then we will add to it. Okay?
Sure.
A young and slightly depressed writer and musician gets tired of his poor life as an artist and is attracted by the idea of quick cuts and shortcuts to happiness. What if someone wanted to give him a fancy apartment in exchange for writing a novel? This was what you were reading from the part. Our protagonist half-jokingly places an ad in the local newspaper and receives a response from a person who appears to be a cross between Hercule Poirot and Mephistopheles. We will surely come to an agreement, says Aimo Kangas, and suggests that the main character should buy his fantastic apartment at a price that is a horse's length below what is reasonable. The phrase continues to ring in the eye narrator's ears, and during the course of the story, it takes on an incredibly complicated sound. Okay, I mean, the nominee is very long, so let's talk about the book instead, because it's more interesting. So would you like, as a writer, I'm interested how you would describe the book. Like, when you talk about the book, how do you describe it?
Well, I can describe it in many different ways. It's a very personal novel that started from some real life events from my own life, and it's a story about writing in a way. It's a story about art and the real estate market in Helsinki, which is a dangerous place. And so it starts with this young writer who places this ad in the newspaper, which reads, a young writer wishes to purchase a home in southern Helsinki. Give me a good price and I'll write a book for you. And this is actually a real ad that I myself placed in the newspaper about 10 years ago. And I was a young writer as well. And I had published a novel, and I did some comedy for the local radio station in Helsinki. And I went to the bank to ask for a loan, as I was hoping to buy an apartment. And I told the lady at the bank about me being a writer and a columnist and doing a comedy for radio. And she gave me a look that I have never forgotten, and I probably never will. I realized, like in an instant, that as an artist, or as a struggling artist, as a young writer, it's almost impossible to make a living in Helsinki, at least, because everything is so expensive and the salaries aren't high. So in order to have a place to live, you really need to do a lot of work and a lot of hard work. And I reached this point where I was asking myself how far I'm willing to go to afford to live in the city, and would I even be willing to trade myself, was a question I stumbled on, and that's actually where the novel started. Yeah, how far are you willing to go to fulfill your dreams? I guess it's the central question of the novel.
Yeah. In the nominee, it says that the title Röda rummet is not inspired by August Strindberg, but I want to object to that because I can see parallels to August Strindberg. One of the parallels are that you both write about two poor artists. And the other parallel is that you write about Helsinki and August Strindberg writes about Stockholm. Could you talk more about the title and the parallels to Strindberg? What do you think?
Well, as a student of literature, I have, of course, read Strindberg's novel a few times, and the parallels that you mentioned are surely there, but I wouldn't read too much into me stealing the title. The Röda rum in this novel is a very different place from the fancy room at Bern's salonger in Stockholm in the 1800s. And my original title for the novel was also a different one, but my publisher didn't like it and suggested Röda rummet, and I told him that you know that it's taken, right? And he was like, yeah, but it's 140 years ago, so let's appropriate it. And and we did, and it has raised some eyebrows, and some people have also been a bit offended by it, because I guess that Röda rummet is almost like a sacred book in the Swedish literary canon. But so, I mean, it's stolen on purpose, but I meant no harm.
No, because I think that all literature is a dialogue with other literature. And also, do you think that people got offended because the book is queer?
Maybe. I mean, both Sweden and Finland are very liberal when it comes to the acceptance of queerness, but still there's a lot of I don't know the word in English, but like homophobia that's maybe not expressed, but like in structures and in customs, and not all of it is easy to spot. So stealing a title for a novel about fetishists and about mostly gay people in Helsinki is maybe, you might be onto something there.
Yeah. Also, I'm curious, what was the first title?
It was actually an English one. I wanted the novel which I wrote in Swedish, but I wanted an English title. It would be a quote from a song by Eurythmics. So the title I wanted was "Some of Them Want to Be Abused."
Ah.
But my publisher wasn't too keen on having an English title for a Swedish book, and yeah,
I
I
understand.
listened to them.
You told us a little in the beginning about what you wanted to explore in this novel. You wanted to see how far you could go for apartment, like trading, like how. But I wonder if you had other questions to the prose before you started, like what more did you wanted to explore with writing this book?
Well, I was interested in a few things. I wanted to write a contemporary novel that takes place in the gay scene, or the gay culture of Helsinki, because there's not many novels about it, and I was also interested in the subcultures within the subcultures, and in particular the gay kink scene, because it's always been there. There's this association for gay kinksters in Helsinki called MSC Finland, which was founded in the 70s by Touko Laaksonen, which you might not know as Tom of Finland, the queer artist. And it's a association that has these monthly meetings and have these festivals and have well, all kinds of things going on, and even after 45 years, it's still like an underground scene. And I mean, it's okay that the association is like in the shadows, of course. I mean, it's not that the people of the association seek the attention, but it's also strange that it hasn't really been written about. And I was interested in describing this scene and these people and the desires that are pretty common. I learned during research that according to a study done at Turun yliopisto, which is a university in Turku, more than 40% of Finnish youths have fantasies about BDSM. And that does, of course, not mean that 40% of all of the Finnish youths are kinky or would be part of this subculture. It only goes to show that the desires are very common. And still, only in 2011, sadomasochism was removed from the registry of mental illnesses in Finland. So only 10 years ago, 40% of all Finnish youths would have been considered mentally ill because of their fantasies about sadomasochism. So it's an interesting topic. It's also more common than I ever thought it would be, and still there's very little written about it. So I jumped on the subject.
But what do I mean? When you wrote this book, you wrote a subject that's obviously taboo. Did you? How was the reader's response to that?
Well, I was a bit scared of it, but mostly I was scared that people would think that it's like a novel that's out there to shock or to cause sensation. And I mean, I was not interested in writing about this topic if I didn't do it justice. So my fear was that it would not be taken seriously. But actually, the newspapers and the reception was of all of my novels, it was the most well received. And now that it's also been nominated to this Nordic Council Literary Prize, I think it's a sign that it has been taken seriously and not like a some sort of sensation, attention-seeking novel, but a novel in general.
Yeah. The protagonist in this novel, you said it was based on you or your story, but he's nameless in this book, right? He doesn't have a name, and he has a friend, Lotta. I would like you to tell us a bit more about. I mean, I will refer to the person in the book as the book person, not you, because in our time we also we want to like the author to, vi är besatta, vad blir det? We are so besatta av författarens jag. What's that in English? We are.
Well, we like to think that the writer always writes about his own life and that everything is like from experience, I guess. And of course, there's been this renaissance of auto fiction, especially in the Nordics, maybe for the past, I don't know, 15 years or something. And since the novel is like written from a first person perspective, it's natural, I guess, that and also because the protagonist is also a writer living in Helsinki, I was prepared that many people would think that it's me. I mentioned that the origin of the story is from my own life. So I mean, it started as a personal story about making ends meet in Helsinki. But as writing went along, I also, fiction tends to creep into any story. Like even if you're telling the story of your life, the mere action of writing it turns it into fiction. So but yes, he doesn't have a name, but we can call him Kai or the person.
But could you tell us a bit about him without spoiling too much, because some people haven't read this book and we don't want to like spoil too much, but what kind of person is he? And also Lotta. the friend.
Mm.
Because it's
Yeah.
Lotta who comes up with the idea for him to put the ad in the newspaper.
Yes. So the protagonist, let's call him Kaj, has just left an abusive relationship. He's in his
Berlin.
yes, he lived in Berlin with his boyfriend, who was a supposed graphic designer, but turned out that he was also a male prostitute. And he abused this Kaj. And as he returned to Helsinki from Berlin after the relationship, he was very scarred by this relationship, and also not very fond of himself. He blames himself for getting into this relationship, for not understanding that he was being fooled. And he also he's soon approaching 30, and he feels like he doesn't have any control of his life. And in an attempt to get some control of his life, he decides to buy an apartment. And since he's a writer, he's also a musician, but he works with these not really well-paying jobs. He gets his idea about placing his ad in the newspaper, and he's drunk when he puts in the ad. So he immediately regrets it as well, because I mean, it's a strange ad, because in a way he's saying that he's such a good writer that he can that his writing is like worth an apartment, and at the same time he's offering his skills, his art for sale, like some sort of a literary prostitute.
Yeah.
And so he's ashamed of it as well. But he gets this answer from this elderly man, and yeah, well, that's another story then. But the protagonist is unsure of himself, and he's the type of person who easily follows other people, and that trusts people maybe too much, and isn't really that actively in charge of his own life, I guess.
What do you say? Should you read a bit more before we continue?
I can do that, and I can read actually about Lotta, because you mentioned her. Lotta's patience was commendable and made all the difference. She understood how bad things were, and without her offense strategy of messages and long conversations, I don't know how I would have made it through. She would more or less drag me out downtown after orchestra rehearsals, and then we would sit facing each other, drinking somewhere downtown. I would brood or stay quiet, but she usually got me to laugh or think about something else. You were unlucky, she sighed, every time I got caught up in my own self-loathing. And if nothing else worked, she would, thankfully enough, lose her patience and raise her voice, which was an effective way to get me to sober up. Yeah, she snapped. And you have the impulse control of a fridge magnet. In the orchestra, we were among the members who smoked illegally. That was also how we became friends in the first place, outside of entrances and inside courtyards and wherever there was an ashtray. Listening to Lotta's sarcasm and smoking together for a few minutes was especially important that winter, when rehearsals would drag on and there was a lot of time for thoughts to wander. Besides keeping me in line, Lotta had also decided to solve my living situation, and she got in the habit of sending a flood of links for available apartments in different parts of the city before I asked her to stop, because the postings made me feel depressed. It was clear that I couldn't live at home in Vantaa much longer, but the thought of yet another lease, my 9th in 10 years, and yet another temporary address that I would probably never succeed at remembering felt abhorrent. I thought about the classic definition of insanity, repeating the same thing and expecting different results, and mostly just felt hollow. The thought that I should instead buy a home gradually started to grow on me. The idea had something comforting in it, to go into something long-term after everything that happened in the last year, and to purposefully build something that I could rely on, something that showed that I had the ability to take control of my life. Lotta kept up appearances even though she knew significantly more about the real estate market than I did. I suppose she saw my sudden ambition to become a homeowner as a sign of progress that she didn't want to get in the way of. Soon enough, I understood how naive I had been and how high the crazy apartment prices in Helsinki had climbed. Even the very smallest places in the neighborhoods I could imagine living in were priced seemingly beyond all reason. It was depressing. But Lotta was able to find the humor of it all, and for a while we competed for who could find the most absurd posting, the worst floor plan, or the most shameless price point. One time when we were drunk, I told her what Rebecca had said, and Lotta grew keen. The thought of a trade sparked something in her. She had soon convinced me that we had an idea that was good and exciting, maybe even brilliant. Published author wishes to purchase home in southern Helsinki. Give me a good price and I'll write a book for you. We put together the text for the ad while drinking wine, and Lotta more or less forced me to send it to the Hufvudstadsbladet newspaper. Think about all the Finland Swedes with keychains jingling with Art Nouveau apartments. They're the ones who have family histories. I read the listing over and over again. I sound like a pisshead, I said. So what if you get an apartment? Or like I'm looking for a sugar daddy. In bourgeois circles, it's called a patron. I don't know. Yeah. We both shrieked when the email was sent, and Lotta clapped her hands and poured more wine. So
Thank you.
it was actually inspired by the story I heard about the writer Tove Jansson, who is the mother of the Moomin Trolls, and she also wrote brilliant novels for adults, and she was a painter and everything. And according to the story, she used to pay her dental bills in the 50s with oil paintings. And the idea that art could be used as a form of currency was inspiring.
Yeah.
And it also seems like it's something from a very distant time. It wouldn't really be possible nowadays, I guess, to pay your bills with paintings.
No, only in your novels.
Yeah, well.
But let us talk about Aimo Kangos, because he is the guy that answers he answers the ad for the ad, and he is also the one that kind of gets Kai into this BDSM kind of thing, or acting, not acting, what do you call it, kind of BDSM, because
Yes,
because the narrator is not familiar with this word. So tell us.
So the person who answers to the ad is a man named Aimo Kangas. He's an elderly gentleman who lives in a two-story apartment in the northern parts of Helsinki, but he also owns an apartment in the southern district, and this is the apartment that he wants to sell to the young writer. And he also has a story he wants the writer to tell, and it's the story of his life in a way, how he grew up in a very religious part of the country, and how his homosexuality affected his relationship to his parents and to the surroundings. And he also, as a very young man, he realized that he was a fetishist and he was a masochist. Already as a kid, he used to tie himself up in the forest as a game. And of course, as a child, he didn't know why he did it or why it felt so good. But as he grew older, this longing made him move first to Helsinki and then to Spain to find people who was like him, because nowhere, not in like his surroundings, not in literature, not in school, he heard anything about having an urge to be tied up. So he didn't understand what he was feeling, and he thought he was alone. He was the only one. But of course, he eventually found other people with the same longing and the same desires. And the story he wants the writer to tell is the story of how he found out that he was kinky, and how he found his place in the subcultures of Helsinki, where sadomasochism is practiced.
And when Aimo talks about the sex life, the prose gets really detailed. I mean, if you're not familiar with BDSM, you get to learn a lot about it by like how you write about the taping, tying, and electricity in the ass. So I wanted to actually talk to you about the language and the form, like how you work with it. Because I think that the language is kind of rakt, vad blir det? It's
straightforward.
Straightforward. And it's like when you read this book, you follow the narrator all the way, you know. It's just, you want to turn the page all the time, but at the same time it's high quality. It's prose that's really high quality. It's, you know. So I wanted you to talk about the form and the language and how you worked with it.
Well, I've worked on it a lot. The novel took me almost 5 years to write. I also did other stuff besides writing, but it was, of all of my novels, it was the most difficult one to write, partly because of the form. I was a bit inspired by these novels, like the way novels were structured, like in the 1800s, like for instance, you know, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, which is like a person recounting a story where another person tells a story, and you like, it's like a story in a story in a story. Also the novel Frankenstein is also like this, like the structure and the form is really complicated. And since I'm writing a book about writing a book, and it's a book that contains a book. I knew that the form would be hard to make easily understandable and easy to follow. But so it's written in the first person by this young writer, but when he tells about Aimo Kangas, he lets Aimo Kangas speak, and he also uses the first person and narration. So it's a novel that has at least two persons who address themselves as I. And I wanted the retelling of Aimo's story to like sound like it's spoken, like it could like be read aloud, and it would sound like a line in a movie or in a play, and still be like telling the story. So I was really working hard on the dialogue and on the way Aimo tells the story, and I'm happy that you found it to be well-written prose. I'm very happy.
Yeah, because I've read somewhere that you've been writing on this novel since 2015.
Yes.
And that's
I
quite
actually
a long time.
started it in New York. I was at the residency in upstate New York in a place called Oh My, and I started this novel there in 2015. So it's been a long time coming.
What difficulties, and could you I want to know a bit about the difficulties and the excitements while you were writing this novel?
Well, the form was difficult, but also writing about this really sensitive topic, people's innermost longings and people's desires, and writing about people who haven't really had their story told a lot, at least. I knew I had a huge responsibility to make it right and to not make caricature out of these people, but make their desires be complex and human. And it took a lot of effort and a lot of research and understanding and interviews and really placing myself in the headspace of these characters. And it was at times I didn't think it would be possible to finish the novel, but I pulled through, and I'm happy I did.
We are happy too.
Thank you.
You know, some writers say that the characters wake them up in the middle of the night. Did you have anything like, the characters wake them up and want them to write, if you know what I mean, like they talk with them? Did you have any of that kind of experience, as the characters were like chasing you?
Well, I tend to sleep lightly when I'm in a process of writing, and I'm often processing the day's writing as I try to fall asleep, and it keeps me awake. But I wouldn't say it's the characters. It's more my self-doubt and my worries that I won't be able to finish what I've started. But yes, when I in a writing process, I'm a really horrible person. I'm terrible to hang out with. So
you know what August Strindberg said, that it's said about him that he had his demons and his crisis, and when he came out of them, he was a genius.
Yeah, well, the days when the writing goes well, and if I make some good progress, I'm a wonderful person. I'm like I'm fun to be around. I smile more. I'm in every way like I'm a better person. So writing has always, like, the quality of my work, or my perceived quality of what I've accomplished, really affects me how I am as a person. And it's not healthy, but it's how it's always been. But thankfully I have a husband who's really patient.
Besides submission and BDSM, this novel is also about, because I was reading an interview with you and you said that you wanted to also explore the different dynamics in a relationship between two men, and that you think that the male role has not taken terrible many steps forward in the gay world, at least not in some quarters. Could you talk more about that?
Yes, it's not an easy topic to speak of in Swedish, and it's not easy to speak about in English either. But yes, I mean, the story concerns, in a way, how people take advantage of each other, and how people abuse each other, and about how some people seem to be more prone to be abused or to be misled, and how there also are people who take advantage of that. And as I was writing this, the Me Too movement happened, and I realized, because I mean, I've read a lot of testimony from people, and I mean, it was all over the media. It was that year's most discussed topic, about men abusing women, using their power to take advantage of people with less power. And we had like all of these like a national awakening, in a way, that's still going on. But my experience was that that the Me Too movement did not change anything in the gay culture. Of course, it was a movement about like an uprising of women against the abuse of men. But like the same dynamics are also active, like in male to male relationships.
Yeah.
But it's not it has this added dimension of the male role, or the traditional male role, which is like supposed to be this strong, independent person who stands up for himself. And I think it's harder for a man, like even after all of this discussion about power abuse, it's still harder for a man in a gay relationship to admit that he's been abused or been taken advantage of, because it's so deep inside the male role to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
So, well, this is well one thing I really wanted to explore and to write about. How do we know that we're being abused, and how do we know? How can we be sure that we're not the abuser? All of these very difficult questions came up, and I tried to make them part of the story.
Yeah, have you read the Edward Louis Story of Violence? It's about.
No, I haven't. No,
because I think that you're totally right. I mean, the Me Too movement, it's excluded a lot of perspectives as well, you know. So it's important to take these perspectives up as well, because we are not all one type. We are different. So I have a question, like, do you have a theme that you follow up in your books? Can you see a theme that you always like go after?
Well, I usually write about young men. I tend to return to the topic of Christianity, and about how a religious upbringing might affect you later in life. Also about queer people. And I mean, these are topics that have had a huge impact on my own life as well. So it's maybe not strange that I write about it. I grew up as a gay man in a really religious part of the country. I was in a part of this revival as a youth, and it was a very conservative movement, and being gay was not okay and not looked upon as or I mean, it was considered a sin. So I've written about these topics a lot, and I guess that all of them are also in his novel in a way. The religious aspect is not that like its role in Röda rummet is not huge, but it's still there in Aimo Kanga's upbringing. But discovering that you're different is a recurring theme in my novels, I guess.
Okay, I have so many questions left, but I think that we need to wrap up, because we want the questions from the audience as well. But before I ask you to read one more last time, I have a question, and this is this one. I ask all of the authors this question. It's a test, okay?
Okay.
I wonder if it's anything you don't understand in your own writing, and if so, what?
There's something I don't understand in my own writing. I mean, I like during a writing process, there's a lot of subconscious stuff going on, and I have like this notebook that I also always keep with me, and I write down these sentences and revelations that at the moment seem really important. And there was one line that I had written in the notebook, and I had underlined it many times. But when I read it back, I couldn't understand it. But I knew it was really important for the story in a way. So I placed it in a dream in this novel. It's towards the end of the book. I'm not exactly sure where it is, and I don't know it by heart, but it's like well, that's at least the passage that I can't say I understand, but I know it's important.
Okay, let's take a last reading and then see if we have any questions.
I'll read a short passage in Swedish, so at least you can hear how the novel sounds in Swedish, even if you might not understand everything. And I won't read a long passage. Det handlar om underkastelse. Jag ser det tydligt från allra första början. Aimo var barfota och hade pressade byxor och en glänsande kavaj som måste vara måttsudd så mödolöst som den rättade sig efter hans minsta rörelse. Det är tonarten i vilken människan är satt, sa han. Det första jag minns är pappa som stoppar om mig. Täcket och hans händer som pressar mig ner i madrassen. Ibland satte han handen på mitt huvud när jag var inlindad och bad aftonbönen med sin varma handflata stadigt på min panna, höll fast mig som ett skruvstäd. I efterhand ser jag vilket avgörande inflytande pappas kramar har haft på mitt liv. När han kramade gjorde han det alltid med ett fullständigt allvar. Värmen gick inte ur kroppen, det var någonting nästan radioaktivt i hur det kändes och antagligen förändrade han mitt DNA. Nej. Jag har faktiskt inga tvivel om att det var precis det som hände. Man kan inte krama någon på det där sättet utan att förändra det. That was Aimo Mokangas talking about his relationship to his own father.
Thank you. Let's see if we have any questions, do we? How can we see that?
No questions so far, so if you have any more for Kaj, please.
I have a question. Kaj, songwriters have like a music list when they write. Did you have any for this book, Röda, rummet?
Well, I listened a lot to classical music. There's this opera by Richard Wagner. It's called Tristan und Isolde. That has a prominent place in this novel as well, and I was listening to the overture of that opera a lot when I wrote this, and also the rhythmic song Sweet Dreams was a soundtrack to this novel, absolutely. And I mean, it also contains my preferred title, Some of Them Want to Be Abused, so those are at least two songs or musical pieces that I listen to repeatedly while writing.
Thank you. So, I mean, thank you for this talk. It was really nice to talk to you. I think that, let me see here. Everyone who hasn't read this book, you should buy it and you should read it.
I think so too.
And Kaj, before we stop, do you want to say anything or add anything to the conversation?
When I got the email from Scandinavia House, I was thrilled, and I was thought I was getting to travel to New York for a talk. And then in the end of the email, it read that it was via Zoom, and I was a bit disappointed at first, but I'm happy that we had this conversation. I'm happy for the invitation and to get to speak to you, Sara. So I'm happy I answered the email.
Me too. I'm happy too. It was wonderful. I mean, time just went like this. And I think we did good with the English.
Yes, I mean, it's our third language, or I don't know how many languages you speak, Sara, but it's my third language, and it's really rusty, but
we made it.
We made it, yes.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much. Thank you, Kaj. Thank you, Sara. And hopefully maybe next year we can actually have these talks in New York.
Yes.
Let's try.
I'll be there.
Yeah. Or when the book finally comes out in English, it would be great to be able to present you here in New York as well. So, but thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or this evening. It was a great pleasure to listen to you discuss the novel Red Room. And please join us next week when we go to the Faroe Islands with Benny Bergson. So thank you, and hope to see everyone soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.